Mike, Chad. Good evening, council members. I'm Brett Baranack. I serve as the director of the Carolina Thread Trail. I think I've met some of you in the past, and I want to introduce Ashton Lamb, who's community coordinator with the Carolina Thread Trail, whose focus area is over here in eastern Gaston County and other parts of our region as well. But first of all, I just want to congratulate the city on the work that's been done, and it looks like everything's moving in the right direction to approve the pedestrian plan, because it does sort of factor in and have a relationship to the Carolina Thread Trail Master Plan in Belmont. So I think that's definitely a step in the right direction. You should be commended for that. I want to talk tonight a little bit, because of the nature of the Carolina Thread Trail, just talk a little bit from a regional perspective, and then sort of strategically how Belmont fits into our plans for the Thread Trail Regional Network. And I'm going to talk a little bit about background. Ashton and I are going to sort of trade off back and forth through the slides here, but we'll be quick. I know it's been a pretty long afternoon and evening, and the break actually allowed me to go grab something to eat, so I kind of appreciate that. But first and foremost, the Carolina Thread Trail, for those of you that don't know, this is a regional network around 15 counties around Charlotte. So we're everywhere from Iredell County in the north, the whole way down to Chester, South Carolina, and from Cleveland County and Cherokee in South Carolina, the whole way over to Anson and Stanley. So it's a very big area, 15 counties. This graphic here shows the master plan for the entire region. And this map is really a culmination of all the individual county master plans that were adopted several years ago. I believe Gaston County was actually the first county to adopt the Thread Trail Master Plan back in 2009, sort of simultaneous with York County, South Carolina. So Gaston County and the communities realized the benefits of this vision from the beginning. And what you see in this particular graphic, the lines that are red, orange, and yellow, all the corridors are important in this region, but we also have to think about strategically moving forward, where is the most favorability for getting trail on the ground? And those are those lines that are colored there. And there's a lot of activity going on. There's the most favorability for continuous miles of trail. That's a real goal of the Thread Trail, and working with our partners, getting 2, 3, 4, 10, 15, 20 miles connected. And right now the model sort of has greenways and trails. You get a couple miles here, a couple miles there. They're starting to come together though. I mean, you've probably heard of what's going on over in Mecklenburg County, Charlotte, with Little Sugar Creek Greenway now. There's 17 continuous miles. Ashton will talk more about the efforts over here in Gaston County and how there's real favorability for getting those miles of trail connected. But something I wanted to mention about this is, it's been about 14 years since the master plan in Gaston County was adopted. I've been with the Thread Trail since 2016, and I don't think it's any surprise that really the built environment and just the growth and development around Charlotte has really changed the face of the region over the years. So the master plans that were adopted, several years ago, need to be updated. So we're finding with increasing frequency that we're doing more amendments to our master plans, because more opportunities have been created to get trail connections between A and B and B and C and so on. So that's something that's usually locally driven. The whole model for the Thread Trail is essentially bottoms up. The communities sort of lay the foundation for how we do our work. So if there's an opportunity that's been established for a trail, the local partner will come to us and say, hey, we think this might be the better route. Let's talk about making a change to the line on the map. So I kind of wanted just to talk, and I know Tiffany had asked me if I'd just touch briefly on how the amendment process works, because that is something that we're seeing with more increasing frequency. But that map there shows that Belmont really sits at a strategic location within the region. We have two of the primary corridors of the Thread Trail coming together right through here. You're coming down the South Fork corridor, and then east to west, you're coming from Mecklenburg, crossing over the river, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, and going the whole way over to Cherokee County. So this is just a you know, Belmont and then just the region here, there's just a lot of activity. And, you know, arguably Gaston County, especially this part of the county, is our highest priority area for trail development. Now, I shouldn't say arguably. I'm sitting in a room with everybody from Belmont, so it's actually number one most important. So, but there's just really a lot that's going on over here, and I think you're all aware of that, what's going on in other communities nearby. This is the master plan that was adopted for Gaston County way back when, so you can kind of see in a little bit more detail, you know, where these corridors have been identified. And interestingly enough, as we listened to Spencer's presentation earlier, those sort of packaged priorities that he talked about, those really align with where the Fred Trail corridors are through Belmont. So it sort of doubles down, on the importance of those locations within Belmont and beyond. I want to talk a little bit about connections, and again, I'm just kind of setting the stage for what's going on around here and why it's so important to keep the energy high with trail development in this area. There's connections, there's a lot of work going on with other communities around Belmont. Belmont, you're obviously doing a lot of work to expand the trail system. There's been some real success over the past few years with Rocky Branch and getting that connection to, is that somebody calling me?
I don't know. Sorry.
And then, you know, getting up to Mount Holly. But the Catawba River actually is both kind of a barrier to the extension of the Thread Trail, but it also recently is representing opportunities. And getting across and connecting to Mecklenburg County is something that's very important to kind of getting more of that connectivity in the region. And just a couple of things that are going on.
What were all the letters? I thought it was on.
Oh, yeah, those are just, those letters represent they had corresponded to a table that we had on a map for this. It was basically a segment. They were different segments. These are what we call our gap maps, and just identifying where we still need to fill in those gaps to get the continuous system. You know, there has been some talk, if you think about going north of Belmont towards Mount Holly and trying to access to the northeast, there actually has been a feasibility study done to look at a bike pedestrian bridge over the Catawba River, which, you know, ultimately, as far as the context of Belmont, would be Belmont Abbey over to Mount Holly, then getting across the river to connect to the Whitewater Center. Now, this is a very much a long-term vision. It's a very expensive project, but it just shows the connectivity potential in the area. Now, something that's much more short-term and much more feasible, because it's going to happen, is the bridge replacement here on Wilkinson Boulevard over the river. And it's important to talk about this because of the provisions for biking and walking that have been put into this bridge. There's going to be 10-foot shared use pathways on both sides. And then I know there was some talk earlier about pedestrian facilities over at Wilkinson. And each side of that bridge is going to have pedestrian actuated signals. So you can cross over Wilkinson Boulevard and it'll make the traffic have to stop. If you've seen some of these, what are referred to as hawk beacons, pedestrian hits a button, it turns the light red, and the traffic has to stop. So I thought that was a really good component of this bridge project, and it's also going to bring the side path up along Catawba to eventually connect into this area where, Abbey Creek Greenway getting down to Lofton Park. But, and then, you know, those pedestrian facilities will also help facilitate north-south trail connectivity when that situation arises. So you'll be able to, you know, essentially ride your bike safely or walk from here over to the Islam Nature Preserve soon. But I am going to I talked a little bit about what's going on in this area. I want to turn it over to Ashton so he can talk about the South Fork River corridor and the influence on trail development all around this local area.
Yeah. Sorry about that. That was the mic. I was doing the buzzing. Everybody kept looking at their phones. I was like, I think I nailed it. That was the mic. So, yeah, a few people who wanted to be here, and May was actually here and had to leave, but I just want to point out some of our volunteers that are actually from the city of Belmont and or actively engaged in volunteering here. Elaine Wiley serves, she's the president and CEO of Wiley Agency in downtown Belmont, serves on the South Fork Committee, which I'm about to talk about. Richard Boyce serves on our Catawba Lands Conservancy and Carolina Food Trail Government Affairs Committee. and as you all know, he's a former mayor of Belmont. And then May Barger, who was here, had to leave. She's a Title Lands and Services Carolina Thread Trail Board member, and she helps Phil Bogan on a couple committees related to economic development in downtown. She's on our South Fork committee, and then she's also serves in other philanthropic roles and works on public art across Gaston County. So I wanted to recognize those volunteers as they play an important part in our efforts here. So anyway, to the presentation. As Brett mentioned, we have a number of key corridors within Gaston County. And Belmont, as he said, is the center of two of those. The Gaston Gateway Corridor, which is in blue, and the Matthews Belt South Fork River Corridor, where Belmont is in the end of that over in the McLean area. The South Fork Corridor encompasses Spencer Mountain at the northern end of the scope of the project. It's about a 20-mile corridor in the Daniel Stowe Botanical Garden, and at the south end of the South Carolina State Line down there. A part of this project also is public art, as well as connecting Rocky Branch Park, Poston Park, Catawba Cove County Park is a part of the corridor, and we hope to see more public art implemented not only in Belmont but across Gaston County to get other types of users on the trail to experience our greenways and our communities. And these are just some examples. Juan Logan and Ivan DePena both are here in Belmont and do great work. And I think, these are just some local examples around the region where they implement artwork. So now, coming back to Belmont, following our kind of our more context presentation, I just wanted to say too, I live on South White Road, and was thankful I got to run home and go see my daughter and come back, but I just wanted to say that I'm a resident here. And part of the reason why I chose to live in Belmont was because of the parks, facilities that we have, and trails that we have, and an amazing downtown. So thank you very much for having those facilities, and as a nearby resident, hope to see more of those personally. So the status of Belmont's trails, currently, we have about 0.7 miles of sidewalk, which, as some of your neighbors here, this is just a few, just to look at comparatively to. It's tied for the most sidewalks in the area. There's about a tenth or so of paved trails. That includes the 0.1 miles I was including is part of the Hunts Point development, which is McLean on the south end by Drift. That's where that tenth of a mile is. And McLean built out that trail. So this is the category of room for improvement, per se. But where you all are doing a really good job is with Napa surface trails. And as you can see, related to your neighbors there, 3.4 miles. So all that comes up to 4.2 total miles of trails in Belmont currently. And this is thread trail. So not mountain bike trails, it's the Carolina Thread Trail. So you all have more miles than this, but this is just related to our work. So great work on that. And talking specifically about your two main thread trail segments that are in Belmont. One of those is at Rocky Branch Park. You all know all about Rocky Branch Park. It's about half a mile, and then it picks up in Cramerton, goes the rest of the way. It's about 1.2 miles, and that's the main corridor that goes through Rocky Branch. And then there's about 6 more miles of mountain bike facilities there that are not Carolina Thread Trail. And it's a really successful project. I mean, you all did a great job partnering with the community in Cramerton to get that facilitated. And for us, it's a showcase project. We take our partners there and talk about how this is a really unique joint effort between 2 municipalities, the other nonprofits, the Carolina Thread Trail. So it's a great example, and also a great example of how to build and design and improve that surface trail, which is a more affordable option to get trails implemented more quickly, which I'll kind of reference a little bit later. So anyway, great job with Rocky Branch Park. Another facility actually has recently been renamed from the Seven Oaks Trail to the Duke Kimball Trail. Is down by McLean and connects, and that 1 mile of paved trail is actually a part of this trail segment called the Duke Kimball Trail. And the total is 2.9 miles and runs north to south, kind of along the Daniel Silva Botanical Garden. And like I said, it's a drift in the South Carolina state line right there. So, great natural surface trail, some really neat facilities. So what is next for the city of Belmont? And what does your trail future look like? Well, you all have already put a lot of time and energy from the staff level and within the community's budget towards the Belmont Rail Trail and the Abbey Creek Greenway. We're so thankful for that. And just want to say, keep up the hard work on that, for sure. And the Abbey Creek Greenway, like Brett was saying, would tie into the Catawba Bridge widening over US 74 bridge over the Catawba River. And the Abbey Creek Greenway could actually be completed in phases. If you look to Mount Holly as an example, they did the Mountain Island Park Trail and actually built by their public works staff and only spent $10,000 to build out. That trail is about 2 miles long. We did it in 2018 and received some donated telephone poles from Duke Energy to help complete that trail segment and put in about 30 work days with municipal staff to complete that trail corridor. And that's just an example of how the rest of the Abbey Creek Greenway could be constructed. Belmont Rail Trail, a lot of that, as Spencer noted, was going to be tied into the I-85 widening project. So there's only a few gaps there, which I'm sure Tiffany will talk more about in her presentation, that need to be completed. Go ahead.
Can I ask you a question? I wanted to revisit what Mount Holly did. They put in 2 miles of trail for $10,000.
Back in 2018, and Miles, feel free to chime in, but back in 2018, the city of Belmont, the city of Mount Holly put $10,000 into completing a natural surface. It's about 8 feet wide. It's called the Mountain Island Park Trail, which is actually going to be reopened on Wednesday. And they received some donated in-kind materials to help construct that 2 miles from Duke Energy. But they put about 30 work days from their public works staff into constructing that, but it was only $10,000. So, not to say Abbey Creek Greenway is a mirror image of that, because it's not. There's a lot more topography. But that's just an example to say, well, maybe Abbey Creek Greenway could be constructed using some of your own internal resources. And you could phase out the rest of the construction of Abbey Creek over time.
What was it called? Mountain Island?
Mountain Island Park.
Is it the one that runs parallel to the river?
Yeah.
It's up down, go Mountain Island down, and then south going down along the top of the river.
Yeah.
It's a nice little walkway.
Yeah.
Is that an option for the Abbey Creek?
You gotta have a bridge, remember?
Well, right, but like maybe we could do part of it internally and part
The
of it.
thing with Mount Holly Trail was that Mount Holly pretty much owned that whole property, so there was several tributaries that you had to cross, but they were able to take their staff out and kind of navigate through another area that would be a little bit easier to build bridges out of telephone poles that Ashley referred to. So yeah, they use a lot of staff resources just to go out there, walk through it, kind of lay out where it needs to go, and then as their Parks and Rec and public works staff at that time, they would go out and work on those certain days and do that kind of work.
Yeah, Brett, you mentioned something about the trail line. I mean, this is all to say that things can be done more quickly, and you can get the route in, and you can come back and do improvements over time. So perfection doesn't have to happen immediately. It's better just sometimes just to get access. So that's what we're just trying to highlight there. Yeah.
I think, some of these things that I'm about to talk about, the benefits of trails, and I think generally everybody understands. I mean, just thinking about what Spencer talked about earlier, is it, trails do create a much more, they're advantageous for safety because typically they are standalone facilities, and as a cyclist or pedestrian, it takes you away from cars and minimizes those conflicts between automobiles and bicycles and pedestrians, assuming that the network is robust enough to kind of get you to those key destinations around the, the locale, which, I think in this case, it would here in Belmont. But health and safety is a benefit, and then, the thing that sometimes, I don't want to say it gets lost in the conversation, but maybe it's not thought about, is the real economic impact that trails make, how they make a community desirable, how they make it desirable to, say, prospective residents, existing residents, and just overall heightening that quality of life. And also, quite frankly, all things being equal, a lot of times when businesses are thinking about moving into a community, they want to know what some of those amenities are for their employees or their customers to use, and trails play a big role in that, and are definitely appealing to prospective employers. I won't dig too much into the numbers, but there was a study done on 5 greenways, a few years ago, a study done on 5 greenways across the state of North Carolina that showed some pretty profound numbers on, what the impacts are of trails in this state. Outdoor recreation is a $28 billion industry in North Carolina. That number's continued to grow. We've seen greenways and trails be used a lot more since the COVID pandemic. People have gotten outside. There's a lot of jobs created. There's a lot of economic output from businesses either located right on the trail or within a certain distance of the trail. So, I'll leave these slides to your packet. You can look at the numbers a little bit more, but there's definitely a significant economic impact from trails. And then kind of doing our own regional study on economic impact, the Thread Trail Commission, North Carolina State University, and the Institute of Transportation Research and Education to do a study for the Thread Trail. And we looked at, I think, 6 different trails around the region, and there's a lot of methodology that goes into this. There's a lot of numbers crunching, interviews with users, interviews with businesses, some standard sort of modeling types of software, economic impact software. And without going into all the details, it basically showed everything from economic input to health savings to the value that's placed on natural environment improvement. It's about $3.5 million a mile is what this study showed was the positive economic impact for trails. We did them on all types of trails and all around the region. So here locally in McAdenville, down in Rock Hill, Charlotte, where else did we do them? We did them all, 4 Mile Creek Greenway in Charlotte, yeah, and Mount Holly. And kind of taking it from the region down to local, this is just some stats on what was analyzed and the results from studying the Riverhawk Greenway in Mount Holly, which runs along the river there, and it's directly related to 39 jobs. There's a little over $2 million in wages that are supported. The overall economic output's $5 million, and it has significant tax dollar contribution too from all these impacts. So, and then I really like to put these testimonials from business owners who realized the benefits that trail bring to their business, and really created the motivation for them to want to locate in a certain area based on the accessibility of the trail to support their business. So I have this whole study if you ever want to take a look at the entire thing. We've done some presentations on it in other places. It's a lot of math, it's a lot of analysis, but it has really profound results as far as the economic impact of these trails. And we're just seeing more and more around the region, and nationwide, this is becoming a widely recognized amenity. It's usually 9 times out of 10 the #1 park and recreation facility that's requested by residents in a community, probably surpassing ball fields at this point. These are accommodating to all ages, all abilities. They're free to use. There's just something about the trails that people gravitate towards them. They're definitely when we think about those accommodations and facilities that people want, these are most accessible. So it's definitely an amenity. We're seeing more of them. Just around talking about the state, the recently passed North Carolina budget had some really unprecedented amounts for trail funding in the budget, $54 million. Of that, there's $25 million that is non-recurring, over the next 2 years, or $12.5 million, towards all types of trails. So previously, a lot of the money was just geared towards paved trails. This will support both, unpaved, natural surface, and paved greenways. There was some earmark funding in the budget for trails. In the Thread Trail region, there were 3 earmarks, locally, $125,000 for McAdenville, and then our partners out in Cleveland County, Shelby got $2 million to help with their rail trail project, of which the first phase is opening this weekend, by the way. And then Cleveland County Water got $1 million for some work that they're doing on the upper part of the First Broad River in the Lawndale area. And then there's $5 million in there to support the state designated trails, which is a special grouping of trails across the state. So there's some really significant funding in the state budget for trails. 2023 was Year of the Trail, as most of you probably know. So there's just a lot more support and awareness and realizations of the positive impacts that trails have. And do we want to play this video real quick? We have a 1-minute video. I'll let you guys decide if you want to listen to this or not. I know time is kind of... Tiffany, what do you...
I think we can spare a minute.
Yeah, go for it.
All right.
What's one more this quick? It should,
Oh, okay.
I mean, 3.5 hours.
Yeah, we're making overtime.
So we're past 3.5 hours. We're at 4.
We're at 4?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
you have a mouse. Oh,
Mark said we're all overtime now.
Somebody here.
Okay.
Just say the minute.
yeah.
Well, 30 seconds, because it took us 30 seconds to figure out the video.
So yeah, we have our time on our video. Well, wait a minute. One thing when I was sitting down after my last point about diversity of trail services, I want to kind of quickly come back to before I say this, is that as a trail user, I think if you were to survey just the people in the room, everybody would raise their hand for a different trail service. They'll say, I like natural surface, I like paved surface, I like to paddle, I don't even like to hike. So I think that goes back to that's the first slide I started with, is encouraging you all as a city to continue to develop multiple different trail services to create the connectivity that you're trying to achieve. And that's going to best suit the diversity, not only of trail preference, but also of the type of user as well. You need paved trails because those natural surface trails are not going to be accessible to the same person who's able to manipulate themselves over roots and rocks that somebody in a wheelchair couldn't. So it's really important to pursue those paved trails in addition to going after other trail services. So with that, as far as local support goes, part of one of the services we provide to our partners is trail counters. So at both Rocky Branch Park and Seven Oaks, now Duke Pebble Trail, we had a trail counter up for a year at both locations. And so the data that we recovered from those trail counters, looking first at Rocky Branch from August of 2022 to February of 23, is that the peak number of trips on the Rocky Branch Trail was 112 trips in October. A trip is when somebody walks by the beam. It's an infrared counter, so when somebody goes across it, it counts 1. So that trip might come back, and that's another trip. So that's just as far as an estimate. You can say approximately 50-ish people went through Rocky Branch Trail in October. And on average, across the entire year, 96 trips occurred on average per day at that location. At the Duke Kimbrell Trail, there were 138 trips in November, and that's, again, we had the trail counter there for a year, and that was January 2022 to December 2022. So now, November, coming up on a prime season to go out to the Duke Kimbrell Trail. So go out there yourself and look at the foliage and enjoy Lake Wiley, bring your friends, and on average about 84 trips per day at that location. A lot of the volunteers in the Trailblazers and folks like that are doing a great job building out more facilities around the these trails, the Duke Kimball Trail, so Botanical Gardens actually trying to expand their network around this trail facility, so even more people will be visiting these trails, and as we keep the trail counters at these locations, you'll see increases because of that, just that one instance alone. So with that, this last slide is focusing on how we can help you. And since 2010, the Carolina Thread Trail has awarded the city of Belmont, or I should say, awarded $273,000 for trails in Belmont. So that would be for Tar Heel Trails Blazers, Utah Lands Conservancy, to support trail projects within your city limits. So we have this grant program. It's our probably number one way that we help our partners, and we want to continue to bolster that program and expand it. But we also help in other ways. Grant writing assistance was one thing you all had a good discussion about earlier, and enjoyed listening to that. And we actually provide grant writing assistance. Brett and I, and Jane, our other community coordinator, my colleague, write grants. And maybe a Safe Streets for All grant, we could help you all write that and provide some capacity there. We provide planning assistance. Brett and Jane are experienced professional planners, so we can assist with amendments and looking at potential new routes. We also provide education support to help build your internal knowledge about how to develop trails. We do a regional roundtable about every other year. We just finished one of those for the western region, which includes Gaston County, back in March, and it was really successful. And actually coming up in December, December 2nd, is Trail Forum.
December 5th.
5th, December
Tuesday,
5th.
December 5th.
Tuesday,
Tiffany,
December
you'll
5th.
probably be attending that, right?
That's my plan.
And Tiffany was at the round table as well. this
Yeah.
spring, so.
That's a great opportunity for you all to come learn about trails and meet other local leaders and other municipal staff members who are advocating and working to get more trails in their communities. So I hope to see you there. We also provide landowner outreach. We'll help you talk to a landowner who's the gap in a corridor and explain what we're explaining to you about trails and why it's important to go from one end of Belmont to the other, and the importance and viability that trails provide. And we also just provide general partner and community outreach to like the Tar Heel Trailblazers, Todd Riverkeeper, etc. So we're here to help. And I just want to say in closing that your trail projects are a critical part of the CTT network, as we talked about. The Thread Trail and your neighbors need you all to keep up the great progress you have made for trails in eastern Gaston County. Don't let the foot off the gas. And let's work together to make Belmont and Gaston County a premier outdoor recreation destination and an even better place to live. It's already great. I enjoy living here, and I know it's going to get better because y'all are just putting a ton of effort and energy into a lot of great things. So utilize us. We're here to help. We're happy to continue to discuss more ways we can work together and help you all out. And feel free to reach out to us anytime. And here's our email addresses, and we're happy to answer any questions, knowing that you all probably want to go home.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Brett, your name was familiar. Did you used to work with the MPO?
Yeah.
I thought you did.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that earlier when I
Yeah.
introduced myself. Yeah, I was there.
Okay.
And I came over to the Thread Trail after that.
Well, there seems to be that connection there, because I know Randy Gates was at the MPO, went to the rail trail, came back.
There's an ongoing joke between her and I where, I kind of follow her around and we're interchangeable. So, yeah, that's been a running joke between us since I came to this area 9 years ago. But it's good to have that MPO experience and the connection, the relationship built there. That was good when I went to the Thread Trail because I knew everybody over here in the county.
Sure.
So that worked out pretty well.
And
I've never worked for an NPO, so I'm an outlier there.
You're going to have to get him on board.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions?
I don't.
All right.
Thanks for your time. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Next, we've got a presentation from staff on Belmont trails.
I used to night at the trails.
And walking and
Walking and pedestrian.
yeah.
let me just say that, your assistant city manager, Kevin, back here, and I know you, for better or for worse, he's responsible for me being in this area because he was part of the interview panel that hired me for the MPO, so.
And so,
Kevin and I go way back.
All right, so, I really am excited to have my presentation follow the great work of the Carolina Thread Trail, and wanted to just share a little bit about where we stand as the city of Belmont. And so to do that, I have prepared, if it works, hopefully it does, here we go, a trail map to try to guide us through this conversation and show you a snapshot of where we are today. And so to do that, the first thing I wanted to recap is the corridors that Brett and Ashton just shared with us for the Carolina Thread Trail and where those are. You see some stop points. The highlights are really just the ones that are in the Belmont area, but those lines extend as part of that regional vision that Ashton and Brett were sharing about, that I just wanted to focus this map specifically on Belmont and some of the connecting corridors directly surrounding us. And so you see those there? That's the vision, that long-range master plan vision. So what I did was overlay active trails here in Belmont. You can see we have 3 right now. The Rocky Branch Trail, the trails within Cabin Lofton Park, as well as the Seven Oaks Preserve or Duke Kimball Trail that was just discussed. We also have trails that are not yet on the ground, but that have already, oh, no, that's right, that are not on the ground yet, but that have been approved as part of development projects by City Council and will be constructed by developers with their projects. So there are 3 examples of this to call your attention to. One is a 2.6 mile public trail. It'll be a crushed gravel trail surface. It'll be part of the Del Webb project, which is this one right here, located on the South Fork River. The next is a northern extension of the trails that are currently within Daniel Stowe Botanical Garden, made possible through the Worrells River Development Project, right here. And then, as we've touched on a few times this evening, there's another segment that was approved by the Morse at Belmont that is constructing a component of the Abbey Creek Greenway project. And so we've been really successful in partnering with interested development that's come into our communities to not only reserve that right of way, but actually in a lot of cases have them help us to construct our important trail network here in Belmont.
Let me ask you, for Worrells Inlet, we have a mileage for Del Webb at 2.6. Do you have a distance for Worrells River or the Morris section that they're doing?
This one, okay, so it's a little segment. I don't have that. It doesn't look like I have that one there. You said the Morris.
Or
Worrells
Not right
River. Okay, so I'll need to go back and double check. I want to say it's probably about a quarter mile.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause that's
Roughly, it's a short stub there.
Okay.
But the Morris is around a half a mile in the middle there. If my recollection's right, I'll need to go back and double check
That's
on
all
all of this.
ballpark.
Sure. So those are there, and what I've done in this map, which will soon after it's presented to you tonight, also be made available on our website for everyone to be able to utilize and track us and how we're doing to uphold the vision not only of the thread trail, but also we can add in other layers, right, on recommendations that are in our ped plan, or really build this out to whatever's the most useful to council and the public. So the next thing I wanted to do was add a layer for trails that have some planning efforts in progress. And these are from a wide variety of sources, so I just wanted to go through those really quickly. Belmont Rail Trail, that is the city's portion of the project, as well as there's a portion that's within NCDOT's scope included. You see those listed separately because they're managed sort of as separate but connected projects. It's one master project with 2 different implementation strategies. And then also you see the Abbey Creek Greenway project here as well. So we added on to what the developers already committed to, the connector pieces here, which were part of the city's scope, and we'll talk a little bit more about those as well. And then we have the bridge replacement replacement project going on up here. We'll zoom in a little bit, but I just want to make sure you guys have a master view of this. In Pt.2, when they're replacing the Wilkinson Boulevard Bridge and redoing the intersection of Wilkinson and Catawba, is also agreed to build a little bit of a stub connector that would allow our trails in Kevin Lofton Park to continue up to the multi-use path being installed along Wilkinson. That would allow for a connection across the bridge. And then we also have a project application that has been filed for this area right in here, which is just south of Del Webb, which would add, if approved, and it's proposed right now, hasn't yet been reviewed by planning board or presented to you all as city council, but as proposed would add another 2.5 miles roughly of trail going south from the Del Webb project, connecting it all the way down to Tucker. So a continuous trail of around 5 miles from Armstrong Ford Road to Tucker is envisioned, again, partially approved and none of it constructed to date, but there is a vision for implementation there by the city. One thing we wanted to do also is, I'm sorry, hold on. This is driving me nuts. Okay, there we go. Is look at the destinations along our trail network to make sure that we were connecting people to places and to activities that they wanted to go. And so, again, we'll zoom up a little bit, but you can see there's a lot of destinations that are along our envisioned trail corridors, and also already along some of the areas where the city has successfully invested in those trails. But connectivity will only provide greater opportunities for us to utilize trails, not only as recreation or for our own health benefits, but actually connectivity between destination points. In addition to trails, sometimes it's important to utilize the sidewalk inventory that we already have to make sure that we are connecting places in the most efficient and timely way possible. And so there are some key sidewalk or multi-use path connectors that are also important to mention. One is this one right, ooh, that worked nice. Right here, and part of this you guys might have seen before. So Carolina Thread Trail came, I believe it was last year, and talked to you guys about this strategy to utilize the existing sidewalks that are in place within Belmont to connect Rocky Branch Park to the future location of Abbey Creek Greenway, and actually partnered with the city of Belmont on a signage package that we're working through some encroachment agreement details about right now to actually get put on the ground. But that sidewalk connector would provide a real opportunity to connect people that are on the existing Rocky Branch Park Trail all the way over to Park Street, where they may be able to have the opportunity to one day connect to the future Abbey Creek Greenway. So that's one.
Hey Tiffany, can you zoom out real quick? I'm kind of curious, and it's not a conversation to tonight because that might be a whole can of worms, but I didn't see anything in the McLean area. I've had a lot of residents come up to me that the thought, I wasn't around during this time, but the intent was to connect all the individual neighborhoods out there by sidewalks, and I didn't see any of that popped up when you just clicked sidewalks. But it doesn't have to be tonight. I'm just kind of curious about that.
Sure, and so the McLean project as a development had specific areas where sidewalk was included and other areas where sidewalk was not included. There are some connectors for sidewalk that are in there. We didn't, on this map, identify all of the sidewalk connections, really wanted to focus on trails just to make sure that the messaging could be clear for the trail portion. But certainly, we, as Alta shared with you tonight, will have all of that sidewalk connectivity data and would be able to do that. And a lot of the connection points down at McLean are sidewalk driven. But there are the connections like at Hunts Point and through this Seven Oaks Preserve Trail, Duke Kimbrell Trail, to be able to get there. We're also continuing to work with the developer on other opportunities to connect people to destinations, looking at potentially a mid-block crossing along South New Hope to get folks that are living in McLean over to the Drift and to some of the other commercial opportunities that may come online there as their community continues to develop. So the conversation is ongoing, and also the pedestrian plan includes some connectivity recommendations as well. So even if the developer is not planning to install them as part of their approved development, there are some visions included in that PED plan for those connections.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So about this a lot, is utilizing opportunities for connectivity that are within existing projects, right? Letting them know what our vision is helps us to advocate for inclusion in projects as they come online. And so this multi-use path across Catawba River is one example of that. That'll be a multi-use path, 10-foot wide on both sides. And what's nice about that is it will provide us, while only half of it is within Gaston County, by working collaboratively with our neighbors, it will allow for a connection between the Eastwood Nature Preserve on the Mecklenburg County side over to Kevin Lofton Park. Folks can then utilize our trails to go and explore Kevin Lofton Riverfront Park, ultimately connecting to Belmont's Recreation Center. And then there's a vision for a sidewalk connector up Catawba that would lead to the Abbey Creek Greenway and beyond, connecting through multiple neighborhoods over to commercial areas, over to where the current bus stop is in the Big Lots parking lot, as well as continuing to come over, for the location of the future light rail station. If that project moves forward, connecting some service-oriented assets to our community. This is the location of the J. Paul Ford Recreation Center. As you can see, the Carolina Freight Trail goes straight past that city-owned facility. Also runs adjacent to our Belmont Police Department site, TechWorks, breweries, the trolley line or potential future trolley station, downtown Belmont, connecting Stowe Park to Kevin Lofton Park, to Rocky Branch Park, and some of the other areas beyond. And so, my hope is that this map can help to showcase visually some of the important investments that the city has made to date, and also some of the great opportunities for continued investment and connectivity that we have through some of the partnerships with Carolina Thread Trail and other organizations that have benefited us to date through those collaborations. Lastly, on the map, Carolina Thread Trail mentioned paddling as one other opportunity, and we don't often think of that, but Carolina Thread Trail actually includes not only greenways, but blueways as well. And so, really quickly, let me zoom out to the line. All right. I've added to this map locations where we have active public kayak access. We have two locations right now. One is at Kevin Lofton Riverfront Park, and the other one is the South Point Access Park, which is not technically in municipal limits, but open to our residents to utilize. And then there are other blueway accesses that have been part of the conversation with approved development plans, one of which is the potential for a kayak access with the Del Webb project. And then there are other ongoing conversations with staff. And while we review our development plans that are proposed, and we're working with development teams to see what we can include as part of those projects. There's proposed access potentially included at the Riverview at Southport, that project just south of the Del Webb community. The Belmont Rowing Center is considering having a kayak access as well, so that project is continuing to move forward. And so staff has been involved with figuring out the project approval for that, as well as the Lakeview Farms project has also explored the opportunity for a proposed public blueway access on that side as well. So in total, when you look at the map, you can see that the vision that's been our vision for a while in a lot of our long-range and adopted plans is one that would allow for the community to really take benefit from our natural resources and highlight the peninsula, right? We're surrounded by water to allow people to take advantage of that, but to also have opportunities to balance our growth with greenways and ways to explore the natural setting that we're also situated within. Some of our greenway lines run next to some of our streams. Greenways can also provide an opportunity for us to look at stream restoration or other environmental concerns while we're planning for transportation and connectivity and open space. And so just wanted to showcase that we will have this map to be able to track our progress and keep up with what we've done to date, what we're planning to do, and what we may want to invest in as more of a long-range opportunity for our future. So with that, I've got to get back. Hold on.
I do have one question. Ordinance, Mark, would you ask Loft is how our neighboring communities receive such substantial amounts of money in the state budget and we did not? Because I would like to know the answer to that.
I knew you were thinking that one.
Are you-
Yeah,
are you-
I won't-
Since you,
I won't belabor the point, you certainly know this is my passion, and at the end of this, where everybody wants dinner, so I will not say anything else, but we do need to find that out, because that is ludicrous, and I'm gonna say that, I'm just appalled.
just while we have the folks here, because I was gonna ask this, but could you guys by chance help our neighboring communities in regards to presentations or anything to the state legislature, or have you guys done that in the past?
No, I mean, we didn't do anything specifically to assist them to get these earmarks. I mean,
We requested, so we did not receive that.
well, I mean, we've done a lot of presentations in these towns, and I don't think it's any secret that it's, that these trails are important to them. Now, how they went about and were able to, procure that kind of funding, I don't know what
Well,
the.
no, I was just asking, I don't know if you guys have resources and stuff like that you've helped, because generally we offer a presentation to the state legislatures, they look at it, and then they decide what's the best project. I was just curious if y'all have helped, it wasn't like, I'm just curious if y'all had resources.
Just know Belmont wasn't the only town in Gaston County did not receive funding for trails as well, from earmarked funds. Cramerton didn't get theirs. It's one example I think of. But great, Brett does serve on the Great Trail State.
Sorry,
Well, I mean,
I was just curious.
some communities might say, well, how come Belmont got $10 million in water and sewer
Well, I
infrastructure
would
and we
too,
didn't?
in other words, I'd rather you have some money for the rail trail or the Abbey Creek Greenway. So, yeah, that's really concerning.
I know that Representative Loftus did mention that some communities that approached him actually have like huge binders.
That's where I was trying to get to, because when I went up there and talked to Don and met with him one-on-one, he was like, well, where's your material, where's all your presentations and stuff like that? That's why I was asking about
He
presentations.
did mention
That's
that.
even angrier, okay, because if that were the case, then we should have done a price if that's what they want, and we were not.
I didn't.
So, I mean, it's just, it really is appalling, so I said, this is the end of the evening, and
No, I
I
know.
want this to sell, okay, because I've worked long years and worked in Gastonia as well, but this is just frightened me, I'll just tell you that. with this whole thing.
That's a good
Mhm.
takeaway.
Yeah.
Because it sounded like they do appreciate the dog and pony show.
Yeah.
With an in-person presentation in their office in
Wow.
Raleigh. So
Okay.
that might be something that we could consider doing in the next budget cycle.
That's the only reason why I brought it.
That's a good point. Okay.
All right, so now that we have the overview, I did want to provide a little bit more of an in-depth recap on two of our larger projects that are currently in the planning stages. One being the Belmont Rail Trail. So just as a recap, there are a variety of facts we could go over with this project. It's been in the work for quite a while. But high level, for tonight's purposes, we actually adopted a capital project ordinance in 2012. And that included early design only. So that project ordinance that was adopted in 2012 was only for $153,000. Since then, the city has received a CMAQ grant from NCDOT that would assist the city with funding for right-of-way and utilities. The CMAQ funding received was a value of $1.8 million, which requires a 20% local match commitment. And also, an important note to the Belmont Rail Trail project is that NCDOT is including the segment north of the Wilkinson Boulevard intersection in the I-85 widening project. And so the portion that the city has in remaining scope effectively is the portion south of Wilkinson Boulevard, even though the CMAQ funding is for the entirety of the corridor.
Is that CMAQ funding, are there not some strings attached to that project has to move forward in a certain timeline? We have to do the right-of-way acquisitions,
That's correct.
or receive that money?
And apparently
That is correct.
we can't, remember we tried to move the route, and they said, oh, you can't do that and get the money, but with the route the way it is, there's other problems.
I think that she might address that on a future slide.
I will, but you may still have questions, so.
Lengthy and
That's
long
okay.
conversation that we're about to try to tee up tonight for.
You are not wrong.
On
So
a
that
late
is-
agenda.
that is great. So next one that we will provide a little bit more in depth is on the Abbey Creek Greenway project. And as I mentioned earlier, the Morris at Belmont project, which you all approved in May of 2019, included a segment of this corridor. Also, this council adopted a capital project ordinance in December of 2021 to allow the city to construct the remaining portion of the greenway. To date, the city has been awarded $65,000 in grants to help assist us with project completion. And so we'll start off by going over a little bit more about the rail trail. Again, I talked to you about the fact that our focus area is really the portion to the south of Wilkinson. So I'm apologizing in advance for the orientation here being a little bit different than the north-south orientation you might be used to seeing this loop in. But the number 1 there is where the trolley barn is envisioned to be located, which is near Glenway. And then the arrow to the left side is pointing north, right? So headed towards Sister of Mercy. So in 2018, the city invested in a branding study for the Belmont Rail Trail to help us really envision what this corridor could be and become. And so that's a great study. If you haven't had the opportunity to review that, just in terms of visualizing, not just the rail on the ground, but everything that could really be a placemaking experience for this investment, as well as some of the topography changes. So you see on the screen there's a portion of the trail that would not necessarily be able to be flat on the ground if it was constructed within the NCDOT right-of-way, but it would provide an opportunity for an overlook or public art. So different opportunities at each one of these nodes to be explored. And where we stand to date on this one is, while we did get the CMAQ funding award, we actually also got an extension for that CMAQ funding granted by the state of North Carolina. Staff still has questions that are imperative from our position that would need clarification from NCDOT before we can move on to the next steps to really get ramped up to allow this project to move forward. Specifically, some of the questions we are pending an answer to are the exact locations of the right-of-way and easements that would be needed in order to meet NCDOT Rail Division's requirements based off feedback that's been received to date from the Rail Division. That's really related to the determination of whether or not there's a fence that would be needed to separate the tracks from the actual trail itself. And if there is a fence needed along the entirety of the corridor, there is some right-of-way area or easement area that would be needed on either side, roughly 2 feet on either side. So at minimum, about 4 foot of additional easement area might be needed if the fencing would need to continue south of Wilkinson Boulevard. In the I-85 widening project, this came up as part of the conversation because it was determined that north of Wilkinson Boulevard that fencing would be needed. And the project, as I stated before, is actually one continual project, even though it's segmented by 2 different implementation strategies. So we're waiting on feedback on whether or not they would allow the city to move forward without the fencing on the southern portion, but still having the fencing on the northern portion, as the funding pools are slightly different, and maybe some of the regulations might allow for different perspectives and approaches as well. We're waiting on feedback.
I recall though that was not initially part of any of this discussion. This has changed over, the past year?
It was not brought to my attention, although this project has spanned quite some time and had multiple staff project managers over the course of its evolution, because it was originally envisioned in 2010. And so I'm not going to say it was never part of any conversation. It very well may have been, but it was not made as part of the conversation to me until about a year ago. And so we've been working to get some resolution there to make sure that both projects meet the federal requirements, both of the CMAQ program, but also the funding is needed for the I-85 widening project. So the other thing is that we had heard from NCDOT and one of the consultants that worked with them that there was a question on exactly which activities would be allowable for reimbursement as a part of the issued CMAQ grant funds. And so the question is a right-of-way acquisition consultant included as one of those reimbursable expenses, or the land acquisition itself included as an eligible expense? We're still waiting to hear back on that item. And this is important because we want to make sure that it's an eligible expense for reimbursement before we look to enter into a contractual agreement for funding that type of service in order to move this project forward. We also understand that the entire rail of the Norfolk Southern Rail line is a historic linear district, and so the entire line needs to be reviewed by the State Historic Preservation Office. It's our understanding that this is being done as a whole through the I-85 widening project, and that they'll go ahead and include the portion south of Wilkinson Boulevard. But we just want clarification of anything else that might be needed that's not going to be met by that project team, so that we make sure that we include it within our scope. Yes, the deadline for construction that's required by the grant funding. So this is perhaps one of the things that I am wanting to get clarity on the most. And the reason for that is it has been brought to our attention that there is a deadline for constructing facilities that are funded through CMAQ funds. And that deadline is 10 years. And so since our CMAQ funds were originally awarded in 2019, that would put, if we add 10 years on to it, the expectation that the actual rail trail would be constructed and on the ground and operational by 2029. As you can see from some of the questions early on, with not necessarily knowing the exact right-of-way, it's been challenging for staff to be able to proceed in making real effective progress on this project to help hit and ensure that that deadline can be met. And so my understanding is if the deadline is not met, we may lose out on the opportunity to be reimbursed for any funds expended. So again, CMAQ grant is in total of $1.8 billion. It's imperative that we understand what it takes to maintain eligibility for reimbursement before we enter in contracts or adopt any budgetary commitments based off of that fact and knowledge. The other question that staff has out to them is based off of the lack of certainty to date related to the actual requirements to design the rail trail. Is it possible to have an extension on the construction deadline? Or are there any other ways that we can work together in order to ensure that that deadline can be met? And really looking at both projects and how they can not work against each other, but flow from one to the other, and having the city and NCDOT at the table as a partner to bring this thing to fruition. So, next steps, from staff's perspective, once we get some clarity from NCDOT on how to move that project forward, we would look to update the capital project ordinance to reflect any CMAQ funding or any other funding sources to allow for that project to proceed forward. We would then, based off of that capital project ordinance, most likely need to determine the need for a budget amendment if there are funds that would need to be allocated within this fiscal year and or future fiscal years. And then once we've been given the green light to engage with a right-of-way acquisition consultant to be able to secure the easements in the right locations on the right parcels.
I'm sorry, I know it's getting late, y'all, but the whole thing that was caught up here, I thought was pending on a certain property in regards to around Circle Drive, which is what we were trying to understand before we, and maybe this is the point, but before we committed any additional funds or even, and I believe during the budget talks, we even actually toggled one of these out of the budget.
Yes.
And
I think it was this one.
And I believe it was this one because of that. So unless that gets resolved, and again, forgive my frustration, it's just getting late. I don't know how we're going to
I can
proceed.
address part of that. Until we get the Willow property surveyed, which I still don't know why there's a holdup on that, we're doing that to help negotiate the other part of it, and we've not done what we're supposed to do.
Okay.
So as soon as we do, we can approach them with regard to what the Circle Drive property is like. So
Well, the other
that's-
challenge on that is to really negotiate. We can approach them and having casual conversation, but to really negotiate, because we're utilizing federal funds, there are specific processes for land acquisition and guidelines and procedures that have to be followed in a specific order to document acquisition. It caps how much we're able to offer for properties as well as the procedures to get at. So that's one of the things, while we can have those casual conversations to gauge interest, it would be my hope that we'd be able to have an acquisition consultant available so that if there's a willingness on all property owners, we can get those proper documents signed and secured.
Where are we on the Willerine property
Great.
survey? 'Cause
Yes.
that's the first part. If we don't do
Sure.
that, they're not gonna look at it.
Sure, so staff's gotten a quote, to be able to move forward with that survey. The quote was not included in staff's budget, but I do have that number for you tonight. The estimate is around $1,200 to proceed with the Willerine survey if council would like to move forward with that estimate.
Do you need a vote?
I would need a vote and consensus, yes, to make sure that everyone's comfortable moving
Are
forward.
we able to take that up tonight?
Well, we have to talk about the funding source, where it's coming from, put that out, we could bring that back at the November meeting.
I can have that on
Can you just put it on
whichever.
the consent agenda? maybe?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
No, the Circle Drive route was our other option. We're trying to remember. The original option was unviable because of utility relocation.
So Circle Drive was actually the original option that was included in the CMAQ. At one point, staff understanding that there were some challenges with that alignment, explored maybe utilizing some of our sidewalk network and routing part of the alignment onto Main Street.
Okay.
We were then notified that if we chose to do that, we would no longer remain eligible for the CMAQ funding. And so we've now reverted back to the originally envisioned alignment.
And the challenge was the right of the utility relocation.
Yeah.
Yes,
Which was-
and also having to
Expensive.
improve the network, right? There were some right-of-ways within the existing network, but largely as well, the CMAQ funding is specifically for congestion mitigation and air quality, and there's some calculations that go into ranking those projects to determine projects that meet the most need. And so by changing the alignment, it was determined that the scoring and the impact may also change, which would mean the project would need to be rescored for consideration for that CMAQ funding.
But if I'm remembering correctly, acquiring the right of way from that other property would somehow alleviate that issue.
Correct. So the city had been communicating with property owners along the alignment for a number of years, and so those are ongoing discussions. We have some
Well, there
easement
was
agreements
one-
in place, but there was one property owner that is still in ongoing conversations with the city.
Okay, and that's what we've been talking
Correct.
Yeah,
about.
what we had said, when I contacted people, we had not even given them a definition about what had happened with the Willerine property, which is property we wanted access to as well. And so that's why, that's our negotiating tool, is to have that property, so we can tell them what they can and can't do, and then at least they'd be more amenable to talking to us about the other property, or the appropriate acquisition people. So that's what it is.
And without the acquisition of this right of way from this one property, it would be very expensive to relocate the utility poles, is that right?
Yes, and the alignment design has actually been adjusted over time in order to try to avoid or reroute around utility poles to try to minimize costs as much as feasible.
Be that as it may.
Yes, but there are some additional costs, I believe, around $2 million if we needed to relocate some poles without.
Yes. One other question, so it's a rail trail, so there's going to be a path near the line. What's the relationship between the trail and the trolley? Is the trail contingent on the trolley or vice versa? Like, how do they relate to each other?
Sure, so they're actually two completely independent projects. At one point in the rail trail's visioning, you may recall that there was renderings out that showed the rail trail actually happening on the, in between the tracks, right? The asphalt was being poured in between the tracks, and that would become the rail trail. And that's happened in a number of communities in our region. However, that was not NCDOT's preference. They wanted the ability to reactivate that line one day, if ever they so chose. And so the design for the rail trail is adjacent to and largely contained within the NCDOT rail corridor. However, there are space separation requirements, and so there are some easements needed to adjacent properties along there. But the majority of the trail, wherever feasible, is within that rail right-of-way, but not on the rail line anymore. That being said, They're two independent projects. If we get the rail trail and the trolley doesn't move forward, we have a great bike and pedestrian connection. If we get the trolley and the rail trail doesn't move forward, we'll have that sort of micro-transit solution. But the real vision from a mobility standpoint with that is that you give users options. And while the city is not leading the Belmont trolley, we do see that as a complementary type of project alongside of the rail trail.
But certainly with the trolley project and whatever its status is, it would not impede the rail trail or have any effect on whether the rail trail moves forward or not.
That's correct.
And to add one more piece of it, the Belmont Abbey Fine Arts Center, there's a good possibility that will be able to be across from the actual campus. So if you're looking at how wonderful this could be, that you're going to have a connector and be able to go to the Fine Arts Center. So that's, of course, still under consideration, but the $9 million is certainly going to make it more likely to happen.
And you talked about the spacing or the gaps. I know we focused on the one property that we've all been discussing. Would additional right-of-way acquisition be needed then from other property owners on Circle Drive?
That's right, why would we consult?
That's really the question, right? Is if that fencing needs to be installed, and we may need additional 4 to 8 feet depending on the topography, it may impact owners that were previously agreeable to a
Okay.
certain.
My question is more, as things stand now, let's assume the fence wasn't required. Would we need additional right-of-way acquisition, or is that only if the fence is required?
We wouldn't. My understanding is we would not need additional land. What we would need is additional documentation. So we have the initial easement agreements, but they're not necessarily the fully recorded documents because the actuation of timing wasn't included in those original conversations, right? So we'd want to go back and make sure property owners, right, are aware that if this project's moving forward, that everyone's informed of the potential time frame for that project, and then allow the right-of-way acquisition consultant to be able to firm up any additional documentation that's needed.
Tiffany, do we need to leave all of these two gentlemen to help us, or is that even reasonable to think about as far as helping the situation go forward?
I'll take whatever help you guys would like to offer.
We'll talk more about it.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions on the rail trail?
No.
No, she's got more.
I do.
Yeah.
Good.
Gosh.
That's what's trying to keep us moving here.
All right, so the last one I wanted to really focus on providing an update for you all on tonight is the Abbey Creek Greenway project. This project, it is one of the ones that was in our 2009 pedestrian plan. That being said, it was in the plan for a while and then it started to build some momentum. So in June 2020, Council actually approved a contract with ESP and Associates for design services. These costs for design services were supplemented by 2 grant opportunities. One made possible by the Carolina Thread Trail, which provided $25,000 of a design grant that was awarded in July 2020. And then also the Gaston Community Foundation awarded us $10,000 in September of 2021. Staff continued to work with ESP through the engineering and design for the Greenway, and in order to get some initial cost estimates. And so in February 2022, after coordination between everyone at the table, we were able to bring forward a capital project ordinance for City Council consideration, which was ultimately adopted. Then in April 2022, the city hired THC, which is a right-of-way acquisition firm, to assist us with the easement acquisition that would be needed for this project. We have been awarded another $30,000 grant from the Carolina Thread Trail to assist us with acquisition, and that was done in December 2021. So we were thankful for that partnership. And then probably the last time we talked about this project in more detail was in January 2023, where staff provided you all a project update at the City Council retreat. And so where we are to date, City Council has asked staff to proceed through the right-of-way acquisition portion of the project only. So on the screen you can see here what was included in the adopted capital project ordinance. You can see design and engineering costs as well as right-of-way acquisition. We are at right-of-way acquisition, again, we are in a contract with THC for that service right now, and working with property owners on ongoing conversations. So our understanding is that's where we're stopping until we receive further direction from council as to how you'd like to proceed forward with this project. Just wanted to review really quickly the costs expended and covered on this project to date, just to give you a check on where we are. So, as you can see, we entered into a contract with ESP in 2020, and then needed to have some additional cost analysis before we could actually put together a project ordinance. And so before that ordinance was adopted, the city spent $129,750 towards the design costs with ESP. After the ordinance was adopted, another $226,485 were spent to move the project forward, which brings our total costs to date to $356,235. So, also wanted to just do a snapshot of the project's identified funding sources within the capital project ordinance. Originally, when this one was presented to you all, it included grant revenues of $505,000. And this was because there were identified SCIF grant funds that were originally envisioned to be part of the project budget. Since that time, those SCIF grant funds have been reallocated, so $150,000 towards the Belmont Skate Park, $1.5 million towards the Belmont Recreation Center, and the other $1 million towards the North Belmont Public Safety Station. So all of that to share that as we proceed, staff is anticipating the need to update the project ordinance to, one, update project costs because it was based off of a 2021 estimate, as well as update the funding sources that would be utilized to bring this vision forward. So, certainly not an inclusive list, but some additional funding options that we could consider to help us to advance this project once council's ready to proceed with construction would be to seek out a Carolina French Trail land. Oh, we already got that, sorry, check that one. That's the land acquisition grant. So that $30,000, we've been awarded that, and we will be reimbursed those funds, is my understanding, once we're able to successfully acquire right-of-way for that. So that's why we're working actively with THC to continue to move that effort forward, to help offset those costs for us. And then for the construction, once the city is ready to move forward, there is an opportunity to apply for a recreational trail program grant, which generally offers around $100,000 in grant funds for successful projects. Also, Carolina Freight Trail typically offers a construction grant. I'm not sure what that next grant cycle will look like for them, but something that we'll be on the lookout for as that opportunity presents itself. As well as the opportunity to reapply for Gaston Community Foundation funds, which is an unrestricted funding opportunity. So we can submit, there's not a limit on the number of times we can submit, and we're so grateful to them for that partnership. In addition, there are more grant opportunities that may be available based off of the state budget that we will be able to research and learn more about. There's opportunities to have community sponsorships and donations, similar to the sponsorship package that went out for the Belmont Recreation Center. There are sponsorship opportunities for trails and naming rights, as well as opportunities to partner on amenitizing the trail through partnerships with nonprofits here locally, like the Catawba River Keepers, who would be interested in learning more about opportunities to provide educational signage or potentially assist with volunteers along the trail. So this is not an exhaustive list, but there are ample opportunities to continue to help to offset those costs for the city taxpayers to move this project forward.
One more opportunity, travel and tourism, both Belmont and county, there's precedent been set for this kind of thing there, so we should work on those as well.
Okay, perfect. And lastly, I don't know if this will work for me, but I did want to see if we could, hold on, 1 second. Oh no. I can't see my mouse, so. Where's tried to get to the very last one, I was hoping I could take the bar down. Nope, that's not the last one, sorry. Sorry, there we go. Oh, okay, well, I was gonna show you a video, which, okay.
Sometimes if you hover
I
and
think we've
hover,
seen this video before, haven't we?
yes.
Yeah, okay, it's all been blocked.
Sometimes with PowerPoint, if you hover over the bottom of the slide, it'll pop up a play button. So doing that or no?
I just
Right
don't know
on the
where my
bottom.
mouse is. Like, I can't,
I think you have to enable the content too, that yellow bar, you probably have to hit that and make sure.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think we've seen.
oh,
They've seen it.
Yeah, we've seen this one before, we're good.
are we good? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's on our website, for those of you who may not have seen it, there's a fly-through rendering that shows, the entire Abbey Creek Greenway vision, and also zooms out to its connectivity to the Belmont Recreation Center, as well as to Kevin Lofton Park. So if you haven't had the opportunity yet, I encourage you to visit the website and look at those renderings as well as the fly-through video to get an idea of what that long-term vision for connectivity may be. In kind of in vein of what Brett was talking about earlier on possibilities for phasing, we've also as staff reached out to ESP to see, we understand that topography on this site is perhaps more challenging, in fact very challenging. We've taken some gator rides through there just to see how we can access that site right now. There's a sewer line that goes through there, and so continued access would be really helpful for ongoing maintenance of those lines, but right now you have to kind of go as far as you can go, turn around and kind of go access from the other side of that. So there are some topography changes, but they also believe that it's worth exploring potentially a phased approach that would allow us to maybe grade that site and look at some other surfacing and then maybe going later with asphalt. So we don't exactly know what that'll look like yet, but staff is working on starting those conversations to bring back more information to council.
Would the sewer and water aspect of this project potentially qualify for some of that $10 million in funding that we received in the budget?
We'd be creative, I guess, if we knew that there was a sewer line that needed to have a potential bridge and not be able to hold the sewer line.
Yes, it's almost parallel sewer outfall, so it's quite substantial.
I would just caution on that, as we do have a lot of projects on the water and sewer CIP list that have been there for quite some time, so just caution.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
No, I know, I'm just
People might not
cautioning
perceive
on
that well.
I agree.
Okay.
But it would enhance access, so not to say that that's the right funding opportunity, but this alignment actually would allow us to have not only a recreation line, but it is also adjacent to the Abbey Creek stream there, so it would allow us to potentially look in the future at stream restoration and environmental advocacy efforts as well.
things that come into that.
Any other questions on this? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Were we being asked to give any direction or just
Is this just an
take
update?
information? Okay, thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is the Vision Zero resolution.
All right. I will hope to go through this as quickly as possible. As you guys heard what Vision Zero is from Ulta. So, just as a reminder, this information was included in your packet, but there are several important components to a Vision Zero policy that I feel like are worthy to note. One is political commitment to this effort. One is multidisciplinary leadership. The development of an action plan, and that will be through the recommendations of the policy that are before you tonight. Components of equity, cooperation and collaboration. Utilizing a systems-based approach that Spencer addressed in his presentation. Making sure that the plan is data-driven, that there's community engagement, and that there's a level of transparency provided. And so, staff has prepared for you a resolution as well as a referenced policy for your consideration in the adoption of Vision Zero here for the city of Belmont. Just wanted to highlight that within that policy, there are a couple of input levels, and then a graph here that helps to illustrate that. So, Belmont resident representatives that you all are interviewing right now, those would ultimately serve not only on the Transportation Action Committee, but can also serve on the Vision Zero Advisory Group. And the Vision Zero Advisory Group's goal is to provide community input from a range of stakeholders. Then that group would advise the task force as it develops and implements and evaluates an action plan for implementation of the Vision Zero policies. Then the Vision Zero Task Force is really an interdepartmental task force that would be comprised of city manager, police department, fire department, public works department, and planning department representatives. And this group would actually be the core to develop and implement the Vision Zero action plan, ensuring continued coordination of all of the relevant departments, agencies, and stakeholders at the table. And ultimately, that information would then funnel to City Council for any needed recommendations or improvements to help to support the action plan. As you can see there from the graph, the goal is that each of these committees, as it relates to transportation, would not operate in a silo, but be interconnected and working in collaboration with one another, as some of the recommendations from Vision Zero may actually be better served to go up to NCDOT on the Transportation Action Committee, and may not need to go that route. So the goal would be to get the information, ideas to council for your consideration in whatever format is best suited for that specific recommendation. Once we have this resolution and policy in place, the main item would be the development of an action plan in order to implement the Vision Zero recommendations. And so there's a few things in here. First, the plan would seek to identify strategies to address safe speeds, safe streets, safety culture, and safety collaboration, and would also likely be looking at some procedural elements to be included of equity, community engagement, making data-driven decisions, as well as a fair process for those things. And so how we get there is going to be up to the different advisory groups and task force to determine and bring back to you all for your consideration. But they'll be looking at a variety of those things as they prepare that. With that being said, that's all I have on Vision Zero. If you have any other questions on the resolution and or policy contained within your packet, please let me know.
A couple things. You said the resident representatives we appoint to the Transportation Action Committee could double as resident representatives to the Vision Zero Advisory Group. Is that the current intention? That they both be, that they'd serve those dual roles?
I think that there would be a benefit in that, as they'd be able to hear conversations at both tables.
Does anyone have an issue with that?
No.
I don't know. Okay. I just want to make sure. The only other thing I'll say is if you look at the policy, there's 2 section Bs. The Vision Zero Interdepartmental Task Force should be section C.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
We'll work to correct that before we
Yes.
finalize.
Any other questions or amendments to the policy? Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution with the one amendment to the policy as discussed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda is approval of an ordinance to close streets in the Eagle Park neighborhood on Halloween.
Cassidy, are you available presenting this? You want me to go through it? All right, this is a resolution to close certain streets in Eagle Park during the evening hours of October 31st, to allow safe trick-or-treating in that neighborhood, and there's an actual ordinance attached to it.
Is there any discussion on this? Questions? Motions?
No.
Are there fees associated with this?
There are fees inside the fee schedule. You have a new application fee of $100, and then in the public works section there are barricades, and they get 4 barricades for $50. Plus in Eagle Park, they requested police officers 6 to 9 p.m., and the cost of that service is $373.12.
Just to confirm, have we done this, we've charged them in the past, is that correct, or is this a?
Yes, Eagle Park, yes.
Okay.
Yes, Eagle Park has requested police officers in the past. I think the difference between last year and this year is that this year we're using a third-party company, Extra Duty Solutions, that coordinates the police officers that are off duty with the actual applicants. And then they charge somewhat of I guess, a fee on top of what the actual police officers charge just to manage the process. And so that's probably a difference between last year and this year. Last year, they paid the police officers directly through the city, I believe.
And just to confirm, it's charged directly to the HOA, the homeowners association, do we know that? If that's how, who pays it, or is it?
In Eagle Park, I believe it is through the HOA.
I guess it would be whoever made the request, right?
Jamie's saying yes, so it is through the homeowners association.
Through the homeowners association.
Yeah.
Are police required, or do they just request police?
They requested police. It's not required.
Yeah, there's no policy around having police officers there, but Eagle Park requested police officers.
And the third-party company, are these gonna be Belmont police, or they use a variety of off-duty officers?
Great question.
Off-duty solutions?
Yeah, Extra Duty Solutions, do they use Belmont police officers or any police?
Yes,
officers?
they use Belmont.
Belmont police
Yes.
officers.
Yeah, we switched over to them to help with off-duty work. So anytime we have any off-duty, it goes through off-duty solutions.
They're like a vendor or a clearinghouse, or they
Yeah,
basically
basically.
they do the logistics.
Yeah, they help set the scheduling up, they, collect the money, distribute money out to officers and stuff like that, so. It really helps, because we only have one training coordinator, and so it really helps him with the schedule.
So when did we institute an application fee? It cost them $100 just to ask for barricades?
This year, I believe, is the new fee schedule. It's inside the fee schedule that was approved through the budget process.
Well, I mean, it costs them $100 to get the barricades, not just to ask for them.
It's $50 for the barricades.
Yeah, there's a $50 fee for the barricades, but there's inside the fee schedule for an application fee for special events applications. I think that's for any special event application.
Yeah.
Has that fee associated with it?
Any other questions? We need a motion, if there's nothing else.
Go for it.
I'll move to approve the ordinance to close the streets in Eagle Park on October 31st, 2023.
Second.
All those in favor?
Uh,
Motion carries. All right, next one's Pebble Creek.
The next item is a similar request from Pebble Creek neighborhood on October 31st to close certain streets in Pebble Creek neighborhood the evening hours of October 31st, 2023 to allow safe trick-or-treating. There's also an ordinance requesting this as well.
And this would be under the same, similar to Eagle Park, right, with the charge and fee structure and everything like that?
Correct. And for Pebble Creek, Off-Duty Solutions quoted Pebble Creek 4 officers from 5 to 9 p.m. at $663.12. They also have the application fee of $100 and the barricades at $50.
So they did request the off-duty officers?
What I do not think they requested the
Right.
off-duty officers in this particular
That's correct.
case.
What they based that off of was speaking with someone at Pebble Creek, whoever's over that organization, said they're expecting about approximately 2,000 people, is what I was told. So they figure like one officer, for so many hundreds of people. So that's where that number came in at as far as 4 officers.
No, that would be a lot of.
I got a call from Dennis Boyce about this, he's involved in the community up there. And it sounded like, he said that he was under the impression that they were required to have these 4 police. Because he said, we didn't request police last year, why are we having to have them this year?
Right, and the only answer I have to that is TJ Green is over the community projects this year, so somebody had reached out to him, I'm not sure who, and asked about that. So he was basing that off of like, let's say if you have like a birthday party and there's gonna be alcohol and you have 300 people there, then we ask that you have officers there for security reasons. It's not mandated that you have them, we ask that you have those officers there just for security.
So if you're gonna have 2,000 people at like a neighborhood party, then that's what's driving the.
Yes, so the more people you have, the more officers you would need, or that's what we ask that you do.
But to Arthur's point, no one's telling them they have to have that.
No,
That
it's
means
not.
they requested those officers, right?
That's correct.
So whoever did the request requested officers, because I was under the impression as well that we told them you guys need officers there or something like
I mean,
that.
I would think if you're gonna have that many people there, you'd probably want a law enforcement presence.
So do we know, is it really 12, how many people?
It said 2,000.
2,000 folks?
Well, they don't have an HOA though, do they?
That's the problem I was getting to, it's
Yeah.
like, how do we charge this and build this? So like, if it's a neighborhood like Eagle Park, or like my neighborhood, or Aberfoyle, some other neighborhood that is an established HOA, it makes sense. But if you've got like Pebble Creek, let's say I pay $5 to go to the total fee, and Miles doesn't pay, my neighbor doesn't pay the $5, then it's not equitable. So I think we might have room for opportunity in this kind of situation. You know what I mean? Like, unless there's a good Samaritan that just says, I'll flip the whole bill, but
And to go back to the question, I do not believe that they requested police officers. They've never requested police officers in the past, therefore they were only brought barricades to block their own streets. So there's a process breakdown, that occurred on this particular request. And so I've actually talked to staff, we'll be lining up, a meeting fairly soon, just staff to work on a process a little better, to state that, here's the process, here's how much, you'll be charged, and if police officers are included, they'll be informed ahead of time. So, I just wanted to clarify that they did not request, police officers for this particular,
That's right.
Looks like the fire chief might have some
They
input.
mentioned something about blocking their own roads with, do you know what type of barricades they're choosing to do?
No, they've always, the Public Works has always brought them by a trailer.
the solvers.
Okay, so it's gonna be our barricades, they're just gonna set them out themselves. Fair enough, thank you.
So are you saying that your future policy is, will that mandate that the police be there?
I can't say that for right now, and until we get down a little bit further inside of, I guess, staff level, looking at the actual, document we'll put together, but
I mean, for me, I wanna try to keep this as affordable as possible, because this speaks directly to pedestrian safety to me, which is something we're working towards.
And there still seems to be some sort of disconnect here, because we're saying they're not, you're saying they're not required, and you're saying they weren't requested, so where do they come from?
well, why don't we, how about this? Why don't we get some clarification, or I guess we needed that tonight.
We gotta do it tonight,
Well,
because
we
we're
can
not
adopt
gonna
the
meet.
ordinance closing the streets without addressing the police officers, right?
Then let's do, let's just do that.
you could waive all the fees, you could waive the police department fees, and they would still be charged the special event application fee and the barricade fee. So there's like really 3 fees that are going on right now, so you could choose to waive them all or drop whichever ones you like.
Have we charged them anything in the past?
Barricades.
We have charged them for the barricade.
There was a fee associated with barricades last year. I can't speak to the fee schedule last year, but I know that there was not a special application fee last year.
I can see that creating a quandary if you don't charge for the police with other neighborhoods that have similar situations at Howland.
Well, I thought the assumption is that we don't send any police over there unless there's an actual request. It doesn't sound like we know if there's an actual request.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they want.
But then if you have too many requests, then our officers get strained to provide that service. I mean, I don't know.
But we can't mandate that they have police officers and pay though, right?
Not without some sort of policy in place, no.
No, but if you have 9 neighborhoods that request 3 or 4 officers each, next thing you know, we've got half of our police force is without protection when we need them.
But we're not there yet, so, we this is the most we've had.
Thinking about precedent.
Well, we've already set the precedent by doing it last year.
Well, if you don't charge the police officers, I think that problem's more likely.
Well, let's ask this, did we have officers up there last year?
No, we did
We
not.
did not have officers, so assuming all things are the same, could we approve it?
Well, I think we leave it up to them. If they wanna pay for the police officers, we can make the police
Yeah,
officers.
no,
available. If
agreed.
they don't wanna pay for them.
Let's make it clear to them that that's their choice.
Yes, yeah, charge them, but if that's if
Do we
they're
wanna
asking-
waive the special application fee since they weren't charged that last year?
No, I think we've got the fee schedule set, I think we should do that.
Yeah, that's new,
I'd rather we
so,
can charge Eagle Park for it and not charge another
Yeah,
neighborhood.
we have to do that same.
Well, I guess that would be, if we could make whoever's communicating with them, make it clear that they don't have to have police, that's up to them. And, you know, if they want them, then they'll have to pay, if they don't, then,
So we should approve the ordinance and just let them sort of choose à la carte.
well, it sounds like we just approve it as presented.
Yeah, yeah, because the ordinance doesn't address police.
yes. The ordinance just closes the streets.
But the fee schedule associated with
That's what happens when this council runs from 5 hours and
We need
15
to
minutes.
feed people, that's what.
So.
Without addendum. I'll make the motion, as presented.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Motion carries. All right, Belmont Christmas Parade, street closure.
Yes, this is a street closure for Mont Cross Area Chamber since they are managing the Christmas parade on November 28th, and it'll close certain streets in downtown Belmont. And there's an Exhibit A that shows the streets, what the parade route will be, and there's an ordinance associated with this request. And the request is November 28th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m.
And this is usual and customary request.
Yes, sir.
I mean, based on that, I'll motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, Belmont Christmas tree lighting ceremony, street closure.
This is a street closure for Christmas tree lighting ceremony that's scheduled for Monday, November 27th. Road closure for Main Street. And this is a request by staff to actually close the streets. City of Belmont has taken over the Christmas tree lighting ceremony. And so we'll be managing that process. It's November 27th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Which again is also usual and customary.
Motion as presented.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, last item on the agenda, Parks and Recreation, Field Condition, and CityRec update. We've been waiting all night for you.
I never thought we'd get to this point.
We're not there yet.
Don't jinx it.
Well, you see that one there, so,
Well, who put the agenda together?
All right. So we wanted to go over the facilities as requested by council, but to start off, wanted to remind you that in 2019, we conducted a park and rec master plan, and we'll get you copies of this. There's a lot of good information in here, a lot of good feedback from citizens. We've had focus groups, surveys, and other committees. And some things that came out of that. Oh, okay, give me that. The mouse isn't working, so. Athletics was also considered in this study, but it's just interesting that the top things that came from the public workshop was number one, greenways, a dog park, recreation center, that's a check, river access, check on some of that, and then a plan for maintenance. The survey highlights, again, greenways was the number one request from the citizens. The recreation center more ADA accessible parks and a splash pad. And that one's probably for my wife. Let's see. And then the 2019 survey results continue. Looking at our fields, the first was 50% had no opinions. They probably didn't have children or anybody that participated in the sports. But 39% said that the soccer fields met their needs, and 11% said they were inadequate. And then as far as baseball, 22% said the fields met their needs, 17% said they need a lot of improvements. Then 61% did not utilize those fields. With more of the survey results, 89% of respondents felt that it was very important to fund improvements to parks and rec facilities over the next 10 years compared to other priorities for Belmont. So those people felt that Parks and Rec was very important to them, for sure, and played a big role in their lives. 39% feel it's very important, and 39% feel it's somewhat important to renovate our existing athletic fields. So that's a list of all of our facilities in town, but tonight this presentation only focuses on the highlighted ones because those are the ones that are providing athletic fields. And then Zip's going to go through the fields and talk about the amenities they have, and then also talk about their needs. Yeah.
Right now, we're getting ready to finish up our season with baseball and soccer. We have about 670 participants in that. We have 45 soccer teams, about 21 baseball teams, and you can see what's covered. We don't have a couple of parks that will be utilized, which is Davis Park, and you can see the amenities that it has on there. Going to the next part, you have AFGAT soccer fields where we play most of our soccer games. Also, Frady Ball Field is another field that we do a combination of soccer in the outfield and baseball in the infield. Reed Park is the same. We do soccer out there as well as playing baseball.
Are the lights at Reed Park, they're not working, is that?
The lights at Reed Park are working. The only field that's not working is Riding Ball Field, because we do not have any lights at all down there. And that's one of the fields that we really need to focus on. And here's Central Ball Field. Central Ball Field, and give you a long story short, 2 years ago, we only had about 4 or 5 baseball teams and T-ball teams. Now we're up to 21 teams.
Wow.
So at the past, we were only using 2 ball fields. We were only using Davis and Reed Park and Crest because we only had a limited number of teams. Now we just exposed with 21 teams. We also increased from like 37 teams in soccer to 45 teams in the soccer program. So all those utilize those same fields to play on. So we're at a standpoint now where we cannot take a lot more teams. I mean, the lady came in talking about practices and all that stuff. Once we start games, we don't have any other fields to practice on. I mean, it is, they can practice on Wednesdays sometimes, but most parents don't want to do that. And this is a recreational league, so we need to distinguish whether we're going to have a recreational league or it's going to be a more advanced league for people to play on. A lot of parents just want to have fun and just do recreation, which that's what recreation department is for, recreation events.
That's what strikes me about some of the numbers you threw out, because in your needs assessment findings, again, this is based on 2019 data, right? Right?
Yes.
There was no mention of athletic fields.
No,
right?
No.
The
Now,
explosion in
it's all
the
the
team
rage.
growth has come since 2019.
Right.
just in 4 years.
Just in 4 years,
I
yes,
wonder
sir.
how that survey would look if we asked that question
Yeah.
now.
Right.
I mean, it's sort of like the comprehensive land use plan of 2018.
And that's where the problem lies. We just had an explosion of teams, more soccer teams, more baseball teams, more T-ball teams.
Well, riddle me this. We've also heard like lots of people are going to Cramerton, Mount Holly, elsewhere. Are we at capacity?
We're at capacity right now. We can only tell. Last year we had a big problem because we tried to have a little bit more teams. When we got to from 40 teams, 39 teams last year, we increased at 64 teams. Well, that made practices decrease and a lot of confusion. So we're limited to 45 teams only.
So we do try and minimize.
In soccer, other towns are coming to us. It's about facilities.
Yes.
People were going to Cramerton for basketball because we didn't have facilities.
volleyball.
My kids went to Cramerton. you at the gym.
Right,
So now that's solved.
but it's, some of the programming issues that I'm hearing about are like volleyball and basketball, because they're saying the programming is lacking. It's not a field issue, you know, as much with the migration to some of these other areas as it is a programming issue, is what I'm hearing.
Well, the problem we have with that in the past is we only use like Belmont Middle School, and we got late practices there, so now we had a rec center, we can start implementing some of those programs over here. We just finished our volleyball programs, which was successful, we didn't have any complaints from volleyball. So as the time goes on, we're gonna be able to add more and more teams, and more people are gonna be able to use that facility.
That was a complaint, we didn't have enough teams, but we didn't have enough registrants either, and so that's coming, since we have the space.
Let me ask you a quick question. I asked Brian McGonigal because I heard that we were leasing Evgant Field to outside folks to use, and he said, no, that's not true, we're not leasing our fields at all. But I'm wondering, are we playing even semantics? Are we lending our fields to anybody? Have we got outside play on those fields at all?
No, we're not. I mean, there's no fencing up, so anybody can go out there anytime.
No, I understand, but I mean, we're not
No, we're
lending
not.
to any entities.
To our knowledge, nobody's going out there playing that we know of.
Okay.
Yeah, because I heard the same thing, but I mean, I don't.
No, we're not.
They use it.
South Point uses it between 3 and 5, but we got the joint.
So now that's an interesting.
Well, what I had heard, it was the club teams.
There's no club teams that we know of.
None from the Abbey?
No.
So does the schools, so like take South Point High School, take Belmont Middle School, are we allowed to use their fields at all or anything like that for our programming?
Yes.
We are, okay. I had always thought that was an issue as well, that we weren't able to use.
It
It
was
wasn't the new middle school we've had issues with.
That's what I'm
But
trying to
we-
that's what I'm saying, is
Yeah,
the
the
new
first-
middle school.
The first year, we were allowed to use it at the middle school because of the insurance situations.
The court.
Is
But that
the
was,
South
I
Point
mean,
using
that's
the fields
solved.
right now, is that because of the restarting that they're doing on the practice fields at the campus? Or is that an
Oh.
annual thing that the South Point's using that?
What you just said, they use it because they're doing maintenance of their fields.
Right, so that's just a one-off thing this year, hopefully.
What's that for South Point?
They're restarting their practice fields.
Gotcha, but we're able to use Belmont Middle School's soccer fields as well?
Correct. We just began to use their baseball field. The first was basketball. We used basketball this past season, and now we're gonna be able to use like some of the basketball on Saturdays.
And we're still running into a field shortage?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, we still are with those 45 teams, and that's where people they are wanting to practice more, and we not have space to do practices when we start the games, and it's kind of we don't have the space now. What we put forth to you is hopefully would be the upgrade rod and ball field. We need to we do need to upgrade our ball field, especially rod and ball field with lights and the infields. I think what you have in your package is the prices for being able to do that. But that'll be
Is it like a third infield and take out?
third infield,
Yeah.
so take out that rock, the screen is what we have there now. The only field that has the correct dirt is Davis ball field. Others are rock dust, and nobody wants to play on that. I would rate our ball fields, I would rate Davis probably a B, all the other fields are C, maybe even a D because of that rock dust.
Do you have a, no pun intended, but do you have a ballpark estimate of what the cost to upgrade the?
Around 50.
No, I'm saying the field behind the old Belmont Middle School, Stowe Park, that field in between the old.
We did not do
To bring it into.
We did not do so part for the simple reason that with that field and his group used that, and we stopped using that because they have a lot of bids there.
You have to pick.
So you have to pick which one we're gonna do. If they're gonna use them, we're gonna use it because when they put stuff on the field, they have a truck
Sure.
and vehicles going on there. When they have the movies in the park, they have movies up there and stuff with cars going in and out. So we did not use that space. So it's built the council discretion to tell us whether you want us to reuse that or not use it or what. So we need direction on that.
So are we only doing games and practices on the weekends?
No, that's through the week too.
Okay, because you mentioned something about like not practicing during the week and then.
Once games start.
Once games start,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, all the fields have games on once we start. And if we only go to one practice and then play one game, we be playing forever to see what they're in.
Okay.
We're kind of in compliance with all other cities. All other cities do the same format we do. Everybody needs to play 2 games a week. And we actually can play with other teams because of the age groups, the different age divisions. Sometimes we
just that one location?
Well, we also need to upgrade, Central is what we can do right now. Central, we just need a little bit of dirt on it.
Okay.
A couple more truckloads of dirt on Central, but that's not our ball field, that's owned by the county. So in one proposal, we did say lighten that ball field, but that's not our field.
Well, wouldn't,
Progressive slides to,
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what
I mean, if it's their
So
field,
if we
isn't
got-
that their responsibility?
No, it was a gentleman agreement back in 2013.
I don't like to hear that.
That's before I came, but it was a gentleman agreement back in 2013 to where we did the maintenance on the field and we could use it after school was out. And that's what's been the process ever since 2013.
Richard, Martha?
I remember there was a little question about just buying the fields outright.
Probably could've gotten a good price back then.
But here's some of the proposals right here, you mentioned that, we take, Belmont Central out, which is like $48,000 to do Reed, Ryan, Central, and Freddie ball fields with the infield dirt.
That's for all four?
That's all four, yes, sir.
1, 2, no, that's for Reed, Run,
Central, Freddie.
Frey, wasn't it? Oh, all four.
All
okay.
four.
12 grand piece.
And then one thing that, I think was one of the complaints about the no fencing, so we'll be able to put up a 20-yard portable fencing for your little leagues, that's what the requirements are for little league games. And that's what the portable fencing would.
That'll help Davis a lot.
And that will help Davis, and that will help all the parks. And then we also have the next year lighting, that $1 million is lighting, Davis Park, Rising Park, and Reed Park. What's it, Reed Park?
So Davis needs lighting too?
Davis lights are about 20-some years old, and the center field lights do not work. And plus, you got an issue, you have to go up on that pole to turn those lights off and on.
Wow.
Yeah, those-
But the
that's
benefit to that, Miles, isn't it in our CIP
for next year.
Yes.
For next year. Now, CIP for next year.
So we budgeted for the lighting.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, you went for the light for next year.
Well, now that's to say if, the CIP is approved in this format for next year, because it's 2025, so
That's
we,
correct.
if you recall, we have a new CIP program that'll be, probably implemented next year. We have all our water sewer projects coming up. Some of these projects are already listed in here, and then some of the other projects that we'll need. So, this CIP list may be different next year, but during the retreat, we'll be going through that to kind of study it. But, currently, it's, funded at $2 million to, replace ball field lights, I think at, 4 fields.
Yeah,
It's $2 million.
We've got that one in there.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like dirt infield for those 4 fields is low-hanging fruit that
The 48,000.
would be money well spent, because I think we've all heard complaints about the quality of the infields. I'm not sure we need the portable fencing, but.
You know, what is that?
The portable fence, that gives a perimeter of 200 feet for that's what's required for Little League baseball.
Like Davis Park.
Right now, the fields are wide open,
Yeah.
so if you hit a ball, you're going 340
So you can catch the balls from
Correct.
all the way out.
It also divides it from the Belmont Red Raider Optimus football, which is completely, the field is, you can't use it because they drive their trucks on it. And so it's an issue, so we can't actually use it for soccer because of the problem. They can't program people out there, also they take the time. So I think in the fall, they said it was good, but the spring can't use it at
I
all.
don't know, I mean.
Yeah, so
I never-
are they paying for that?
No,
This is tradition.
tradition, that's always been.
So,
You just probably don't mess with tradition.
Hold on, Jason, you need to, now you probably know all about this position.
Well, are they like fixing the field at least when they tear it up?
No, they just use the ball field. They have about 200
You gotta-
kids playing, and it's a great program. It's a
Oh,
great
no, yeah, I'm
program.
not dishing on the program, but like if they're coming in and tearing up our field, like,
We've talked about possibly getting a gator or something as an option that they could just pull up to the parking lot, take all their helmets and stuff, and put on a gator and drive out, and wouldn't do as much damage.
I drove by there the other night, I didn't like seeing all the trucks out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they have boat club, I don't know if they just don't, but they do practice at boat club. I was
They
there
play
the
the
other night.
games and stuff.
But they also practice. My daughter now cheers, and we were there picking her up, and they were practicing football there through the week. So, but they weren't actually on their field; they were in the baseball field practicing football.
Okay.
So maybe they use both.
So I think the problem is utilization. We got a lot of people using our facilities. I mean, they're Belmont residents and they use our facilities a lot, but all the soccer teams, football, volleyball, all the sports that we have, they're well participated.
Well, we had a discussion when I first came on council about Optimus use of that field. Because they were talking about why can't they move their practice out to boat club, and they said it's gonna be very difficult for a lot of the kids that play Optimus football to make it out to boat club road. And that was the thinking then, I mean,
It's not that far.
well, I think they felt it was for some folks to make that trip out there. Things may have changed, but that was some of the discussion.
Maybe check with them, see.
Yeah, would it hurt to just maybe see if there's a way we could make this relationship work a little bit better for everybody?
And we have reached out to them, asking them to use their baseball fields a little bit more, since that's one of the growth areas that we have.
Yeah, I mean, something like that. I mean, continue to tear up our fields, but, you know, if we need a baseball field, you know, that seems like a fair trade.
So we have made contact, we haven't heard back from them yet, so we did make that request to them.
Is that the Lewis's?
One of the staff person needed me and made contact with, he knows those guys, so he made contact with them, so he's working on that for us. So
That was a huge operation. I mean, I was there last Tuesday night, and they feed, like FCA was feeding, they had over 500 people that night that they fed.
Yeah.
I think they got over 320 boys and girls in between football and cheer.
Wow.
In the program, so it's,
Yeah, I drove through it once. I was like, man, what's going on here?
yeah.
Yeah.
So to get our ball fields up to a B level like Mount Holly and some of the other communities, then we would need that 48,000 for the infield and the 7,500 for the portable fencing.
I agree with Jim. I think the infield stuff, that's just low hanging fruit there that we could just tackle, right? And then if the portable fencing, you know, Kevin raised a good point on that. So, I mean, if it's needed, then.
And that's total $7,500,
Yeah.
not per.
They're like $1,500–1,700 a piece.
I mean, somehow we managed to play without fences when I was little. I think some of those balls are still rolling and having to stop, but I guess.
I remember
Was there any of your
playing
balls?
No, they're going the other way, 'cause I missed them.
This is the main one though. I think bathrooms, you mentioned, I don't know if you went over bathrooms, but to make them fully usable.
In the CIP, they put in there 1.5 million. I did meet with Bessemer City Parks and Rec, who just installed new lights. Their facilities is way bigger now. They only spent a little bit around $1 million for their facilities. So one thing that came up about Rodden Field, and I have a restroom down there. So I'm hoping that we can get the whole 1.5 million and maybe put some kind of portable restroom down there, because people, that's another complaint about porta johns. It is a big complaint about porta johns. Rodden Ball Field is one of the only fields that we own, that we add a restroom to.
You say 1.5 million for the lighting and the restrooms?
Correct.
Okay.
The parking there is really Darwinian too.
Yeah.
Well, it is, but that's one of the biggest facilities we have for parking. We have parking issues at Reed Park, and we have it at Crescent Park also, which Crescent is not own. So that's what it is.
It's not utilized much because of parking, we just schedule a few games there.
Your 1.5 million with the bathroom, or 1 million, is that a stick-built bathroom? Because again, we had this discussion, I think we brought in a
It'd be a prefab, yes, sir, it'd be a prefab bathroom.
It will be
Similar to the
prefab.
one at Cramerton, right there at the river, you know what I'm talking about? that?
Yeah. Let me ask you one quick question. I know we're going long, but Frady Field, I mean, I don't disagree with the upgrade of dirt, but is that not something that may be in flux as far as the future of that field? I mean, we're gonna possibly be negotiating with a development,
Good point.
you know? I mean, do we just go ahead and put the dirt on and hope for the best, or we wait and see what the results are from our negotiations? I'm just thinking out loud. I mean, what do you
No,
think?
that's a good point.
I mean, we're gonna start with 3.
Yeah, maybe we use that when we go for the last one, or do that one last, if we do it.
What's the time frame on these negotiations with the developers?
Negotiation with them.
For 12 grand.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, it's an unknown, but like you said, it's not a giant investment.
Well, we need to use it now to And that's, we need to use it now.
We need to use it now, yeah, we
So I
need-
think we spend the $12,000 and take our chances.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
That's a nice signal too, if we're intending to keep.
Well, that's part, yeah.
You know, what that's worth. If we improve the field, then that kind of sends a signal about our future intentions for the park, so.
That's true. So as far as the upgrades to this field, are y'all looking for something?
Well, I don't think ZIP has, 48,000 plus $75
Yeah.
million in his budget, so,
Let me ask you a question before we get to that point, if I may. On this last slide here, you said, there's a statement that we currently have a sufficient number of facilities to accommodate youth sports if we make improvements to Rodden and Belmont Central. So even if we add the two other fields and make those improvements to the infields, you feel like we'll have sufficient coverage
Having,
to have practices, even if the game starts for
Rotten
instance?
Mountain lights can be used for dual soccer and the T-ball, baseball facility, which we do not have now. That's an help a lot. And we have been using Belmont Central because of the condition of the infield. It had rolled up with dirt, but since we got that new piece of equipment, the public works have been working on that, and it looks a whole lot better. It just needs a couple of those of the dirt to make the process more nicer.
But if we make these upgrades, do you feel like we can get to a point that, you know, some of these parents saying, we don't even get to practice between games? I mean, is that
If we can do that and keep the same level of service that we have, what I mean by that is the 45 teams, limited to the 45 teams and the 20-some teams in baseball, then yes, we can get by with that.
Are the lights something that if we approach the schools, like, is that something that they might be willing to pitch in? Like, if we came to them and said, you know, we'd like to upgrade the lights, we'll put in some money,
Belmont Central will be the one we could utilize that. We could make contact with them and see.
They don't use that baseball field.
They don't use the field at all, no.
Okay.
Are there no lights out there right now? There's not.
There's lights out there now.
There are?
Yeah, they're old too.
They're old too.
Yeah.
I'm definitely in favor of making these, like I said, the low-hanging fruit upgrades for now, for sure.
I think so.
So what are we looking for here? A motion to amend their budget?
I'm gonna bring it back the next.
I think it would be direction for that, and then we vote on that in the formal.
Come back. Yeah, we can bring it back at the, November 6th meeting on consent if y'all would like us to do that.
This would just be a budget amendment, I guess, to the.
So if he's gonna put on the consent, are we okay with the dirt and the,
Fencing.
fencing?
Yeah.
Is that coming out of that capital budget? Or?
It's fund
balance.
balance.
Fund balance.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. What kind of, like, if we approved it in November, gave you the money, like, when would you be looking at?
It's gonna be on the weather conditions. I use right now at November, December, so probably.
November 6th.
No, we'll get the weather to work with, we'll be able to do that.
Is that something that, like by the spring?
By the spring, yes, sir, we'll be able to do it by the spring, by the time
Yeah,
the
that's-
season starts.
Okay, yeah, that was my question.
Who said that? Was that Zipper?
Thanks, Zip.
Well, that was a fun one.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was a good one.
All right, I think that's it.
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn on the table.
Second.
All those in favor?